Okay, alright, so let's go ahead and do our roll call here. Mr. Markowski? Here. Mr. Bryant? Here. Mr. Baker? Here. Ms. Ramsey? Here. Mr. McMullen here, absent would be Mr. Pryor and Chairman Christopher.
You have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
Anything else to add to the agenda?
Has there been, everyone's looked at the agenda, any changes, anything? No? Okay. So with a motion, or on the agenda is set, so, we need a motion for approval of the agenda.
You could, but
Is that good?
I leave that to the chairman.
Recognition of quorum. Chad's printing out minutes. You said you had some changes to the minutes.
No, not the minutes, the agenda. What we're gonna discuss. I hope that's what we do. What we're going over today on the changes to the
It sounds good email about stuff.
yes, I just didn't print one off.
Okay, alright. Okay, is everybody's had eyes on the minutes? Okay. Look for a motion to approve minutes.
I make the motion to approve minutes.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Did you have questions or concerns on agenda item 6? That would
Well,
be
the square footages and the minimum sizes and stuff like that.
Okay. What I had in the email.
It's just, there are 2 or 3 items that I just wanted to definitely address to make sure that we're in top one.
Well, before Chad gets here, I can give you kind of an overview about some of the changes that I was looking at. And it was kind of driven by what the legislature did in the last session about the accessory single-family dwellings. And when I reviewed it a little bit further, it says that the city can't prohibit a second single-family unit any place where there is already one existing or when it's zoned for single-family. But what threw the curve at me a little bit was that normally you see that as a separate structure, but it also says that it could be attached or even internal to the house. And I thought, now you know what? If it's attached, that in effect makes it a duplex. But that starts messing with the definition of what single family is and what duplex is, especially given the definitions that we had, that a duplex wasn't considered multifamily when I consider it multifamily. So, the legislature made something really interesting. As long as it's considered accessory, you might not consider it a two-family structure, but do you? And so that curve messed with me.
That is weird, because I guess I hadn't thought of it as being a duplex, but it is. I mean, there's no other way of looking at it that this new law eliminates R1 for all practical purposes, because you have the ability to always add a second unit within R1, which is a little bit weird, but I mean, it is what you see a lot in the bigger cities, so I get it, but I mean, I want to be real thoughtful. Most of the ADUs, though, that I've seen in big cities, they're attached. Just because when you get into some of these bigger metropolitan areas, they don't have enough block space to detach. So most of them are garage conversions, stuff like that. patio conversions.
Well, that's why I tried to maybe artfully or inartfully to mess with the definition of dwelling one family, because the legislature kind of made that more difficult. And I just added something also because, and I mentioned this, dwelling one family is only mentioned 5 times in the whole code. And every one of those is in the definition section. Everywhere else in the code, all 31 other examples is called single-family residential, which technically isn't defined. And now, because of the statutory requirement, that just throws things more into confusion. So I thought, well, I'm going to say also known as a single-family dwelling located in a single structure containing only one dwelling unit as defined herein. Dwelling units defined, whether detached or, where permitted, attached separately by not more than one wall to the accessory dwelling unit.
I mean, should it have something to do with the use of that space, and what I mean by that is if it became a business arrangement, right, if you were subletting that space out, then that would be more of a duplex situation. I mean, I think the intention here is to allow R1 to have, you know, mother-in-law's type quarters.
But that's not what ADU is, unfortunately.
Well,
I don't agree with the ADU in R1, but it is what it is actually made to allow the owner typically to rent it out in order to pay for part of their house. It's actually the intent is to make it an income producing part of the property.
yeah, but, I mean.
But that wasn't the intent of the legislature.
Right, and I mean, you're kind of opening a box of worms when you start allowing that type of space to be used for those purposes, then what requirements are you gonna have?
I tell you what, I leave it alone, because almost any requirement we put on it potentially runs afoul of state law.
You see what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Like if you've got your family living in there, like they've just got to come to you and argue with you, there's no like legal recourse really, but if you let somebody let out a garage that doesn't have appropriate or safe facilities or access to it, and then, you know, you've got a legal contract with somebody, they've got rights that will have to be provided for.
And the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, said, oh, by the way, you cannot require any additional parking. And oh, by the way, property owner pays the utilities.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they're kind of thinking that whether you let, regardless of who you let live in your space, it was more to let somebody live in your space, not to generate an income problem.
The question I've got, since they were so kind of bullying the thing through, has anybody talked to our attorney to see, does it supersede deed restrictions and bill of assurances? Or do they still hold precedent over, because I mean,
It does not apply to private restrictions.
Correct. Okay, so that's the fix.
It's the city that cannot prohibit it.
Okay, fantastic. So it's no different than a VRBO situation. You know, right now the city can't necessarily prohibit it, but a subdivision with their own bill of assurance could build that into that, you know, they
Yes.
can stop it right there.
And it specifically says that this does not contravene a privately executed bill of assurance.
Perfect. Okay.
This is just saying, this is the best we can come up with at this point in time as a definition for single family, because it's in effect allowing 2 single families potentially in a single unit. For that reason, I just didn't mess any further with the 2 family and trying to come from multifamily.
Right, because again, I mean, they're shooting for something that covers everything, and so that's
why I recommend deleting it at the proposed definition, just because I don't want to mess with that right now.
That's fair.
But I mean, I think consulting the attorney would definitely be wise.
Yeah, so that's always good to know where we.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's up to the city to be more restrictive than the state code, right? And obviously, if they're saying you can't do something, that's not saying that we can do something, but.
And the other thing I did on the enforcement officer, That was just real simple. I didn't realize that it was already defined, just not in the section of definitions, and it doesn't need to be defined twice, so I'm not proposing to add it to the definition section because it's already someplace else. I did suggest, and I talked to Chad about this, that right now it says that the regulations will be enforced by an enforcement officer who's designated by the city council. I guarantee that goes back to when the commission was originally established in 1957. And it just makes more sense that it be appointed by the mayor. So I'm recommending changing that because it's an administrative function. Any questions on those? The other thing I'm sure that you had some question about was on multifamily density.
Yes.
And let me tell you what I was thinking here. It's all kind of confusing, but I made the assumption that on any lot in R2, you could have, I think it's 3,000 square feet would apply to any single family unit. And because of the weird definition of single family unit, because of the state requirement, I assume we would just keep the same thing if there were two families on one lot. Let's bump that to 5,000 maybe? What it originally was, just because two separate structures, single family structures on 3,000 is kind of pushing the density. And so
where do you have that?
single family or duplex for a single structure.
What page are you on?
This is, what's on my message to you. It's on my email.
Oh.
Are we 140602, that's in the area requirement?
That's
Yeah,
kind of,
but I gave the examples in my
Could you
email.
put that in the, it's on page 9 of the agenda item, we got that. We got the tables, the 140602 area requirement, and page 3 of the email.
But my thinking was, single family detached plus its accessory uses would stay at the 3,000 square feet, which is being proposed, and 30-foot minimum width. But if it's a single family attached, such as which in effect is a duplex, I suggested that, especially if for a single structure with two units, that's when we start applying the 2,000 square feet per unit.
okay, so you're saying for a single family or a duplex, the minimum size of the lot is 5,000 square feet, or a lot width of 50 feet.
Yes.
Okay, which that's fine. For more than one two-family dwelling, so you're saying that if we have two duplexes,
No. Well,
or,
if it's two duplexes, then it goes up to 8,000 square feet plus 2,000 feet for every additional unit above one.
okay.
So I'm operating on the assumption that if you had a structure with one, you could get by with 3,000 square feet. Anything over that, suddenly we think we need a little bit more square footage in order to handle additional structures. And so I'm in effect giving you a freebie on the one. And anything over that is starting to add density.
Okay.
And Rob, you mean anything above the duplex?
Well, for more than one two-family dwelling.
That's what I was gonna say, that's two duplexes.
Yeah.
At the minimum that would imply would be two duplexes, correct?
Yeah.
So it's gotta be at 10,000 square foot, or 12,000. Well, if it's a triplex, it's,
Well, remember, it's over and above, so it's, the first duplex, where the total lot has to be 8,000 square feet, and that first duplex has to have 2,000 square feet above that, so that's 10. Second duplex is 8,000 feet plus 4. What I'm trying to do is give a little credit to the size of the lot being a little bit smaller than the 8,000 square feet if you only had two.
two duplex.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around it.
Me too.
So, if we're saying, if we have two duplexes, the first one should fall within the 8,000 because we have a 5,000 square foot minimum for that first duplex. In the original, correct?
Yeah.
And then are we?
Well, it's 8,000 plus 2,000 for the second unit. One unit of the duplex is free.
But the paragraph before says for duplex would be 3,000 plus 2,000 for one additional unit, which would equal 5,000 square feet. So 5,000 square feet allows you to put a duplex. So when we trigger over to adding the second duplex, are we?
The second duplex then adds an additional, well, then it bumps up to 8,000, which is what you would have with a single duplex, 5,000 plus 1,000, or 2,000. Well, now I'm confused.
It'd be 5,000 plus, we have 3,000 square feet extra right now after the first duplex. So are we insinuating that we're gonna allow the next duplex to be 10,000 or 12,000 square feet from the lot?
$8,000 plus 3 times 2,000.
So 13,000?
The first unit is free because they could fit on a 3,000 square foot lot. So you're allowing a little flexibility, that's all.
I still not quite following what the square footage required would be for two duplexes.
8,000 plus 3 times 2,000. There would be 4 units in 2 duplexes. One of those units, you're not adding 2,000 feet for. The other 3 units, you're adding 2,000 apiece.
One way, the math is so different. Historically, the way that I was taught 25 years ago is simple, and it may not be correct, but it was, you take the number of units and the total land, and you do the math accordingly, but now we're at the way of thinking is the number of units on a lot. So it's we're thinking lots and lots, correct? Basically.
Yeah, the number of units you want to put on dictates how much lot you gotta have minimum. But what you can really put on a lot is the number of units plus whatever is required for setbacks and parking.
Yeah.
So you've got a calculation to do, but this is basically setting the maximum. It tells you how big of an acreage you have to have just for the units.
I get it, but the fact that we're kind of all trying to figure this out doesn't add clarity. The goal of this was to add clarity until we muddied it up. So, I mean, I don't necessarily.
I feel like a table.
Yeah.
It's a good looking table.
I feel like a table.
I'm good with 13,000 square feet for two duplexes. That makes sense. But that's not clear with how we wrote this, that's what we're aiming for.
Right. Yeah, the whole.
I mean, cause the way I'm reading it is that you have a duplex of 3,000 square feet, and if you add a second, then that's 5,000. Then you go underneath, and like, okay, we got 2 duplexes, that's 8,000, and then after if you add another, that's 2,000, so you're talking 10,000 square feet for 3 duplexes.
But you assume that all duplexes are 3,000 feet? What about 4,000 feet?
No, that's talking about the lot size.
Minimum, that's just minimum lot size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal here is to make sure that there's enough room on the lot to provide, like you said, the setbacks and the parking, so it's not really like you're using this to try and restrict. You know, it needs to be about parking and the access and the setback.
Honestly, yeah, this.
You would hope those would control over this.
You know, I try to, my simple mind, wanting simplicity, but I just wonder, just thinking that you just had, you know, triplex equals quadplex equals, because, I mean, really, what we're sort of trying to do is get away from multiple buildings on a lot, right? Maybe not get away from them, but they would require approval.
Because there's already a requirement for multiple units, more than one unit, one structure on a lot has to come before the planning commission. There's 2 ways that we could approach this. One is dwelling unit per acre, or there's another one. But I got the impression that the current standard, which is essentially square footage plus 2,000 per unit, was satisfactory and comfortable, so I was kind of trying to stay pretty much with that.
I don't think that it's not, I just think that, like you said, it's kind of unclear.
It's just kind of unclear.
The way it's worded, and, you know, just, when you look at the table, you don't get that right off. I mean.
I'm perfectly fine with something like that.
If it breaks my brain to refer to a duplex as single family.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I think what you're aiming for is exactly what, I'm perfectly fine
Yeah.
with the 8,000 for, I'm okay with,
8,000 instead of 11,500.
yeah, we've always been told that it was 11,500 for a triplex. And then we added 2,000 on top of that. That's the math we always did. I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, perfectly fine with the 5,000 square feet for a single duplex. I don't think you'll see that happen very often for the setbacks, but what I wanted to make sure of is we definitely don't need to go below 7,500, probably below 6,500 on a duplex lot, just because most of our lots are 50 by either 130 or 150. So, we need to take that into account, which the 5,000 does.
I say that's 6,500.
Almost all our 2 lots in Batesville are 50-foot wide and either 130 to 150 feet. That's just the standard that most people are going to be building from.
So you just wanna make sure.
I just wanna make sure we
it's
fit
too high
that.
and it's not.
Yeah, that's perfect. After that, if we want to set the 8,000 and then just say, I don't care if it's a triplex, I don't care if it's a duplex, it's a door. However many doors you want to add, you can add one for every 2,000 square feet of lot space you have.
Okay.
And that kind of fits the, you know, the density that we've been working with this whole time.
Make sure I'm understanding it. Basically, minimum lot size for single family, 3,000 square feet. Minimum lot size for duplex, 8,000 square feet.
5,000, 5,005.
Okay. 5,000 plus 2?
No, 5,005.
Okay.
I'm telling you, the setbacks are gonna prevent a lot of this from getting out of hand. Cause it's hard, if you do it right.
What about building up though? You know, so I think you can talk referring to doors, but if we still have the 5,000 square foot minimum requirement, I mean, what if someone wants to build up into that? I mean, we're gonna run into parking issues at that point.
I mean, I guess you could go up, but
Well, I mean, your parking.
your parking's gonna do it, I'm telling you that.
Yeah, that'd be, I mean, that's what.
It's a booger to lay out sufficient parking.
Yeah.
So that stopped me from overbuilding personally, which is good. I mean, it needs to be done that way. So the parking, I'm telling you, the setbacks and the parking eliminate most of the nefarious situations. And you're not gonna go up, unless you're doing a townhouse style, which is fine, you're not gonna go top and bottom as much because that triggers a fire code situation where, you know, why in the world would you put a $10,000 sprinkler system on a duplex when you can just change your floor plan and avoid it?
So just to be clear, for a single family attached or a duplex, 5,000 square feet, 50-foot minimum lot.
For the duplex, yeah.
Or anything above that is 8,000 square feet plus 2,000 units period.
Yes, 8,000 for the first duplex, and then 2,000 per unit after that.
Say that again.
8,000, an 8,000 foot lot, if you wanna go above a duplex, you need the minimum of an 8,000 foot lot plus 2,000 for every door.
Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, if you did 4 units on one lot, you cannot do that in an under 12,000 square foot lot.
Okay, just to be clear, single family detached plus accessory unit, 3,000 square feet,
Yeah.
30-foot minimum lot width. For a single family attached or duplex, 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
50-foot lot width. Or anything above that, it's 8,000 square feet plus 2,000 square feet per unit.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be simpler. I love it. Glad I thought of that.
I mean, there's been some variances where, you know, we've been able to get more density than that on a couple of things that we've done by going smaller studios. It would eliminate that a little bit, but it's not, you know, the end of the world.
Well,
So,
these numbers actually require less lot than what you currently have. So you might be able to get a little bit more density in there, not a lot.
Well, and again, this should, you know, be the basic, right, and we should be pushing everybody towards planned development, as small or as big as y'all wanna go. I mean, it could be one simple thing. Somebody comes up with a good, it states in there that its intention is to do what all y'all say that you wanna do, is build these lots up.
Yeah.
And that is how you get these things done and documented and cover yourself.
Yeah, I think it does. If you wanna do a higher rise apartment, that's good. No problem.
You can go as high as the fire chief will let you.
Yep. So, I agree with that.
Well, like I said, I mean, I think the intention is more than just for large scale development, more complex development, is to give you that flexibility, to give the city the ability to have that flexibility and justify their decision.
And if you wanted to go to 5 stories, then you would absolutely have to do a PUD.
Because of our, yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to mention on the setback on corner lots, the way it's always been interpreted, and I see it frequently interpreted, is that you got 2 front yards, and I have a problem with that. You only have 1 front yard and 1 side yard, but nowhere was side yard on a corner lot explained and defined, so I added that as a yard setback side, street side, as opposed to front.
Where is that?
It's on page 6.
The only issue I see with this is you leaving it up to the property owner.
They have to determine it based on where the address is located. That's the front yard.
I think it should probably be master street plan or engineer determination of major and minor streets.
What typically happens on plats that I've seen is the plat comes in, it shows 2 addresses, 1 on each side, which is really probably only valid when you've got 2 front yards. But you're gonna have to pick one or the other. and we could have put something in here with the requirement, and I didn't do it because I thought, let's keep this simple. The front yard is defined, it could be defined as part of the building permit. You have to define which is your front yard and build it to that, because 1 yard you can go side and 1 yard is front. I wasn't gonna get that specific in the regulation, but that would be one way to handle it.
I mean, it's an architectural preference. If you have a corner lot, are you gonna go the ranch, or are you gonna go side? So that's really what it boils down to. Do you need the broad side, or do you need the narrow side on a corner lot to architecturally fit what you're going to put on there, so.
I've always believed that when you put 2 front yards on a corner lot, you're making that lot less developable. Or
Oh,
you
yeah.
have to increase the size of it substantially in order to get any kind of unit in there. And it is the single most common cause of variances.
No,
Yeah,
you have to be able to do that.
I don't disagree with our previous conversation on the 15-foot and the side triangle and that kind of stuff. I just feel like it's probably something that the city should, have the ultimate say on, because you got a major street and a minor street, and the homeowner wants to pick something. All right, let me just throw this one at you. What if you've got a old or urban style, and it's actually got a street in between behind the houses, and they go, oh, that's where I want my address. Then you're gonna let them consider Main Street as their backyard? No, I mean, you're not gonna do that.
The double frontage.
You see what I'm saying? Like on a corner lot, when you're talking which one's gonna be the side versus the front, it doesn't really matter unless it causes the site issue that we're talking about. So from the city standpoint and the zoning standpoint, it should be based on the geometry of the roadway, not based on the owner's
Definition from a
preference.
double frontage lot requires 1 to be front yard and 1 to be rear. I think.
I don't know if we have the double definition, or not. I'd have to check on that.
I could be
But
thinking
you
of
gotta
somebody
be
else's
clear.
ordinance that.
I mean, that's pretty, and if the city doesn't care, then it's right? But I mean, like I said, if you've got somebody, like Main Street is a perfect example, if you've got somebody that wants to use one of these side streets as their front yard instead, then you're shorting Main Street, which is your main road, and you don't wanna do that.
Let me ask Chad, would it be difficult as an administrative procedure on a building, for the building plan, the building permit, that they have to demonstrate in the drawing which is the front and which is the side?
Shouldn't be. Like, I mean, that should be, if you're gonna make a distinction, that should be required.
I mean, we already
all the
tell
time.
you, when we build, cause I do corner lots a lot. I mean, I'm telling him right then which one's my side yard, cause, I want him to go out there and look at my setbacks and make sure they're in the right spot. And I have to tell him that to start with, so that's, we're doing everything but writing it down somewhere.
But also your address needs to match, right? If it's Main Street, your address for that property is.
Yeah, wherever your door station should be matched.
Not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other issue, the post office has got ultimate say as to where your address can be.
So that's really not what I want.
Actually, the addressing authority has the ultimate responsibility. Okay.
Let them roll. It ain't you, right? It ain't me. The point is, it's somebody other than the homeowner that gets to decide where their address is. I know this for a fact, cause I wanted to put the mailbox on the other side of the street, keep the same address, they wouldn't even let you do that, they're very particular. Anyway, regardless, it wouldn't be hard for the master street plan to determine which is the major and minor street, and if it's not listed there,
It's
the
one thing
engineer or the
where
code
the
enforcement
mailbox
officer.
is, something else where the address is.
Right.
The mailbox could be not on the address side. And the post office doesn't like that.
And now there's additional requirements with the new 911 laws, yeah.
Well, you're jumping on this, you're talking about basically double frontage, but you're gonna have, a lot of the subdivisions are gonna basically your plat of utility lines and whatnot, so you have to basically vacate and go through the steps of having that if you want to put it in the center, depending on how you wanna orient the house.
difficult to do, but it is doable. I mean, I guess most of it be, like you say, the corner lot, we've got main or normal.
One of the things you're supposed to review in a subdivision plat is to review what the address of each lot is. That's supposed to be on the plat.
You have to submit it now. I mean, you gotta have that done before you submit everything.
Yeah, so if it's on the plat, then you know where the easements have to be.
This is all, in any newer subdivision, this is already all taken care of.
Right.
Cause even on the corner lots, they predetermine a lot of these corner lots, they'll have the setbacks on our plat now. And they're just like, listen, that's your side yard on the corner, and, you know, your front yard's this way, so get over it. So, I mean, we're really talking about older.
Yeah, and even going back to that, it's still Old Town Batesville, or even School Edition, you've got these houses that are gonna be, if you're even tearing one of these houses down, you're probably gonna have a house to the back of it that's not going to be torn down, but you still want to cover yourself anyway.
Yeah.
But, no, I don't think one instance of a house, I mean, when it's a near house, I think you're the only one that has one in the back lot, that faces Water Street, the rest of them, they don't have back, but they're oriented towards Main Street, and if anybody built behind it, then would be facing water. So,
Moving on.
all right, six, let's go to that.
No, still on there. On the manufactured home parks, right now, it's carried as part of the zoning section for R2. That's the only place a mobile home park is permitted, but mobile homes aren't permitted anywhere in Batesville anymore. And so I thought we better clear that up. Mobile home definition does say, for 1967, you cannot move a mobile home to another lot anywhere in the city. I mean, they're not permitted anymore, except that they're grandfathered in, that's it. So they're starting to disappear. But we have too many things in here that talk about mobile home parks, and there's no such thing anymore. And I changed the names specifically so there'd be clarity about a manufactured home park. And I moved it out of the R2 zoning section, even though that's the only place it's permitted, it almost looks like it's another zoning district. It isn't, but that could be confusing. So if I put it in this other section and say, this is what a manufactured home park is, and oh, by the way, R2 permits it. And that's in the permitted uses in R2. I just wanted to get it out so there was no confusion as to whether it was a zoning district or not. That's all that is.
So it kind of, if you had a 3-acre R1 lot, this would stop that
Yeah.
from going into that.
Because it's
But it's not permitted in R1.
A manufactured home and a manufactured home park are not permitted.
Okay.
Another thing I did, as we get into the residential districts in the chart, like most other cities, if it's not mentioned specifically as permitted or conditional, they usually leave the little box empty. And I thought, to me, that's confusing. It says, we don't know if it is or not. So I went through the trouble and said, let's just put an X in place where it isn't specifically permitted one way or the other, so that there's no confusion that it's not permitted. That's all that is. And I'll fix the area requirements in R2. Didn't make any other changes to the requirements. Now we can,
What's, I mean, there's a notation for public hearing on here, for all of that.
we can hold the public hearing now, even though there's been a couple of changes. That's it, anybody wants to comment. I don't know that we get any more coming. It's been advertised. I don't know that we need to advertise it again. Chad?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we need to advertise if we don't hold the public hearing tonight.
Advertise
If we hold off for next month, because I hate to postpone or table a public hearing 3 months in a row. I just hate to do that.
If like, I'm out of town first 2 Mondays next month.
So who's speaking?
advertise?
I got a city council.
How about that?
If elected, I will not serve.
Yeah.
How about Daniel?
We'll nominate Daniel for that.
Well, you can hold it tonight. Given what's been happening recently, I'm nervous about not advertising it, so I think it would be better to advertise it whether you're here or not.
We'll just push another month if you want.
And these folks will take the heat.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, add that to the end of the agenda. Seriously, just a quick discussion on public notice.
Well, that was an old business, so we just go ahead and add that.
Okay.
So, for the minutes, I'm saying we are not doing the public hearing, but we're going to advertise to hold one for this next month.
Can you say that? No, I had a whole different thing.
I said, no, I'm back for the minutes. Probably wouldn't hurt to take a vote to say, let's not do the public hearing this month, let's hold it next month. I'll make a motion.
Or December.
All right, I got a motion.
I got a second.
Postpone to December.
Motion to postpone till December.
December? Well, it's all November.
Well, he's not gonna be here, we're not guaranteed a quorum, so we don't wanna make it so rigid that we can't.
Am I gonna be here in December?
Well,
No, you're not.
I'm
I know
not.
exactly where you're gonna be.
it doesn't matter, Chad's not here.
I will be here.
He doesn't constitute a member of the quorum. I'd say November.
All right.
I'll be here.
Motion to, postpone the public hearing until November, next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Motion second. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Can you push the November meeting one week?
All right, next item on the agenda, draft revisions for zoning code chapter 14.07, commercial zoning districts.
There's only two changes basically that I made to commercial. And I had a question that on T1, which is downtown, one of the uses that's permitted by right is automobile sales, service, repair, and storage. Now, that was in there originally because there were two car dealerships downtown. And my question to you is that still appropriate for downtown?
I mean,
Gillihan?
I'm not sure it's inappropriate.
yeah.
Nate's.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't.
What's that, at least two holding lots.
Is it Ellis back here, that rebuilds, Ellis?
Nate, Ellis Machine Shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Does that battery shop?
Yeah, close. I don't know how to. I don't think.
They're keep permitting it.
They moved the RV by the way.
Okay.
Thank you.
You see?
Yeah. Is there on my way here tonight?
Well, and then the house oriented.
Oh,
It was blocking the sidewalk, which is blocking the view,
Mm-hmm.
and they turned it the opposite way.
That's good.
You see, they get off sidewalks.
It felt weird turning the other half.
I can see where I'm going.
Yeah.
I've made two
I
other.
wish they had that setback right there, didn't you?
One was that because of the state law, if you have a single-family residential structure existing in a commercial zone, you still have to permit an accessory single-family structure on the lot. So I added that as permitted.
Okay.
And finally, the subdivision regulations currently require that if a commercial use is going in next to a property that is in single-family residential or zone single-family residential, you must have a 40-foot buffer to that property line. And so I'm putting it also in the zoning code, just to be crystal clear, there's no confusion that that 40-foot buffer next to the single-family residential is required. That's real common. And that's it. I left this thing about the commercial design verbatim, because that's fairly recent. Okay, any other suggestions?
What's that one page before you get that, like that right here, sorry.
And it's in the footnote. Next page.
You know, Rob, and this probably is not the best place, but Rob and I have had some dialogue regarding, public interest. We've just recently, we've had two different, locations, two different people inquiring about an RV park. And we do not have an official RV park per se. We do have one, it's out on Barnett Drive, and, but just FYI, that might be something that, might need to think about. The one person inquired was in a C1 zone, and, Damon and I, we said, bring us a site plan to review, and if it looks in order, then we would bring forward this to the commission, is basically determination as the use is not listed. And the other spot was in an R1 zone, it's actually on a state highway, but in an R1 district. And they were gonna do some exploring on it, but just bring that up, there is some current interest in RV parks.
I think it would be appropriate to make it a permitted use or at least a conditional use in C1.
Yeah, I should say it has to be commercial.
I would say so. I mean, yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think anything else would require a rezone at that point. I can think of one specifically, cause they were very haphazard on the Gap Road, annexation back in the day where they just threw everything on that highway into R1. That's probably not gonna be the best use for some of that stuff up there, so. Just thinking forward, cause I got the putt-putt, it's technically R1, and it was never a resident, use, so I don't want us to get into, hey, we're spot zoning, when, that's probably a really poor zoning choice to start with.
Well, it's a non-conforming use now.
I know. But I mean, there's a lot of open areas out there that will probably be developed, and some of them will probably be for some commercial use of some sort, so. That would feel like a really good spot for an RV park. Personally, but.
I have written regulations for RV parks, and that's probably something we should consider at some point, because if they aren't designed properly, that could be a public health issue.
Well, while we're at this and we're looking at doing this, why do we not consider going ahead and doing this now? I mean, we're right at the perfect time to do that. I mean, it's no different than a manufactured home park. I mean, let's throw it in and set up a blueprint for everybody to follow, and then we don't have to worry about it.
No, just,
Probably a little less on the area requirements for RV use versus manufactured home permanent installation.
Make sure they have adequate sewer septic.
Yeah, adequate
that's the biggest thing.
infrastructure to do that. But I guess putting it into commercial would just give you a chance to review all that.
I'll pull off the dust on a couple of done.
I like it. I mean, even, something's requirement they have to have some type of concrete or asphalt structure to be parked on, things like that. I mean, that's something that has already been, have in place, or.
I don't remember Barnett, did they do that, or they do actively?
I think it's ag.
Is it all?
I mean, it doesn't, I don't even really notice it when I pass it, cause it's got that sod on front that basically covers a lot of it.
Well, and I think we would wanna consider, do you really wanna wade into a whole new comprehensive set of requirements, or do you wanna kinda default back to street guidelines and then relax them from there? You know what I mean? keep it as whatever parking requirements and city street requirements, infrastructure requirements you've got for everywhere else, and then when that doesn't fit, you know, plan development style, you know, relax a little bit. Cause if you start trying to say, well, you're gonna have to have concrete pads, or, you know, we'll have several more of these meetings.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think what's gonna be something that's gonna be consistent, but can also be not an eyesore.
Right, like I said, I think if you can tie it to the city street requirements, that's above and beyond anything that you would ever need, and then give the city the
I'll speak to
ability.
Dave about that, okay?
You know what I mean? Like, it needs to be one of those things where everybody's in agreement, city likes it, everybody else thinks it's a good idea, got enough streets and water lines and sewer and all that.
Typically, what the standards do is put a minimum requirement for each space with the minimum required services to be provided. And the standards are lower than the manufactured home park, but enough to make sure that they don't pack them together too tight and create problems.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going, because there was already in the mobile home, not the manufactured housing, but in the mobile home park, there were some specific
Yeah.
requirements to do exactly what we're talking about.
Still are.
Are there,
Okay.
are there by chance, existing code to prevent, predatory, management? Sometimes those can be problematic for people who might own the home, but not the property that the home's parked on, but then they can't move their mobile home off that property, and they're stuck with,
Not sure.
like, fixed, rent type, requirements or something like that.
You're talking about manufactured home parks in the RV park, right?
Well, that's what I'm trying to
True,
suss out what we're
but
talking about, 'cause if we're talking
yeah,
about
no.
having,
Trailer, a person has up,
Yeah.
say I've got 15 trailers.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
or if you own, like, if you're talking, I'm trying to really, you know,
Get our
understand if we're talking
standards
about an
on
RV park,
manufactured homes.
or if we're talking about a mobile home park. RV, well, then that's
Absolutely
different.
RV.
So then you can drop that off. Alright, never mind.
And
Are we going
There will
to-
have to be a definition of what an RV is.
Sure.
Are we gonna continue to allow mobile home parks?
No, we don't now, right?
We don't allow any new ones, but if there's any existing, until the last unit is taken off, they're allowed. But
Yeah.
you
So
can't put it
any
in-
manufactured
you can't
home
put it-
park we're doing, we're requiring it to be, are we allowing a lot rent?
Yeah. Manufactured home park, as long as it's up to the HUD standards, you're gonna allow it. It's just not very likely.
I was talking about, we allow people to move their manufactured home in and out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, that's different from a manufactured home subdivision. Those are all over Florida.
Yeah, we were
In fact,
yeah.
in fact, I've seen them in some cities around here, but not here.
I think the key distinction there is gonna be probably an HOA, right, or a subdivision covenant, a subdivision covenant.
Yeah.
No,
That's what's gonna make the difference between what you're talking about, where people get into low rent trailer park, can't pay the bills, we'll put you another month, get stuck kind of.
Or
tendencies.
they're convinced to buy the structure,
Right.
but they don't own the land that it's on, and then they should have to pay that rent that
Right.
somebody else can
Yeah.
increase if they're.
Like what we're talking about on the ones of those that you don't actually, you're buying into it more like a timeshare. Some of them, you're buying the lot, you're buying the manufactured house, you're an owner in the community, just like you bought a single family house. The other ones are set up more like retirement community, where you buy in on timeshare, you own the house, you don't own the property, you know, and you pay maintenance fees and upkeep to the HOA, and then you can get out of it without actually having to sell your house, you know, a single transaction, somebody else kind of thing. So, I mean, that's gonna be the distinction there.
Okay, policy question. Because, do you want to have a public hearing on this section on the assumption that we will have, or do you want to wait until you actually see the standards for an RV park? Because that's, as far as I know, the only thing that isn't always
Maybe
ready
you
to
just
go.
email that for us to review, and then we can all answer it.
Okay.
I mean, we're just looking for a minimum standard here to set the bar So if we have a business, right now we don't have a business standard, right now they could just put a clay gravel road in and, you know, who knows? Just a minimum standard so we know that protect his rear end, so he has a plausible deniability, so.
I'm guessing if you require paving, that will make sure we don't have any.
There's been one,
And the that was.
Brex.
Yeah, Brexton.
Brexton. No, it's not just one in the area too.
I'm talking about new.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, it was put in, it's not 7 years ago.
It is new, but to his point, most people that want to do that aren't gonna be able to afford the asphalt.
I agree with that, I agree with that.
Which is exactly, yeah, I agree with that.
So there may be another potential treatment to something like that the city engineer could come from.
Again, make the requirement high and let them accept that. Because, I mean, if you wanna go fancy, there are some alternates, some geogrid alternates out there where you can make a road that'll stand up to traffic that's got grass growing in the road. So
Yeah.
would you not want to consider something like that? I would, you know, but it would have to be the same width and provide for the same ingress and egress and the
I would
geometric design.
allow it on big box store parking lots.
Oh, absolutely, ball fields, parking lot,
Yeah.
the fairgrounds
Because
is perfect.
parking lots are designed, the minimum requirements typically are for the second or third busiest day of the year, which means you got 2/3 of the lot with massive water runoff with no cars. That's another story altogether. Okay, we won't do commercial next month except for this, unless you come up with something else that we ought to consider. I did not change anything in industrial.
Okay.
It is as it was.
What is a sexually oriented business in industrial that wouldn't be allowed in commercial?
Because that's a city ordinance.
No, he's looking for a good example, you know.
Well, I mean, we don't allow sexually oriented businesses in commercial, yet we do allow them in industrial.
Wait, now that, I can see this. What if you're manufacturing something?
But we can't sell locally? How do you support the business?
I don't know, I think I'll ask questions.
Sorry, I just kinda caught my attention.
Window display?
You put it in red, it might have been.
Red light display.
I think that maybe 1 out of 100 cities will allow it in any place other than industrial.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, like I
Not
never,
the want to go.
I honestly couldn't come up with something good until just right now.
I mean, they'd rather go to the county.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you would consider a condom business sexually oriented? Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not that you wouldn't want a factory doing that here, but you may not want.
Well, that's for health reasons.
But I mean, it's on the store, so you can think, I'm not.
And if you wanna go up against Walgreens, CVS, be my guest.
We used to have a rubber point here.
One more item before we get to other business. On the agenda item 10, we were running short of time, so I didn't explain this as well as I should. On the provisions of severability and effective date, validity of regulations, conflicting provisions, repeals, those things are typically what you see in an ordinance. And they were carried over because the municipal league just simply put things that were in the original zoning ordinance. They should not have ever been carried forward in the zoning code. So, just to clean this up, I'm taking them out. That's just cleaning them up. Building setback lines was also carried by the municipal league because it was an ordinance that was passed in 57 or 64, way back when, before there was anything, in fact, it was before a planning commission. And that's clearly been superseded multiple times by other ordinances. It needs to just be taken out so that there's no confusion about what setbacks are. And the same is true for mobile home regulations. We don't have mobile home regulations anymore, we have manufactured home regulations. So that's just a cleanup.
Okay.
And I'm done with my part.
Alright, so we're moving on to agenda item number 11, old business.
Before we dive into the notice of public, is there anything else anybody needs to discuss? No? Okay. I can go with you. Well, in light of this morning's meeting here,
What went on there?
there
I didn't know there was
was,
a meeting.
yeah, there was just a general public meeting, because they were upset about, something that was rezoned last year, and it was rezoned from C1 to R2, and then there are multifamily units being put on it right now. And the main theme was they were very frustrated, because they just didn't feel like they knew that it was even coming up for rezone. So it became very clear as we're discussing this, as Mayor Elmore is saying, well, here's the process, we put a sign out in the garden, yes, the sign does work, from experience, I promise you, the sign works a lot of the time. This situation was a little unique, because it was a dead end road. And then as he let the words roll out of his mouth, we put it into paper. It became very apparent that if we're wanting to be proactive, the public doesn't really have the best resources to know what's happening every month on our agenda. So I know that we have all talked about the fact that we have a good resource in the city website. I don't think it would take a whole lot for the city to put a calendar of events that could easily include the agendas we have each month. They could probably use for the city council and maybe a couple other things. And then there would be no reasoning not to know what's gonna happen, in your community. So, because
You still gotta read.
Pardon?
You still gotta read.
Then that's on the public.
It's on the public to start with.
I agree with you.
Let's put it on the text system too.
I mean,
You send out, that's gonna make people not wanna be on the text system. If you send out 50 notices.
we're just coming up with ideas here.
Yeah,
If we do that, and do we have a Facebook page of the city? I don't know.
I think so, and honestly, and my take on it is, we're doing exactly what we've been, ever since the zoning code was implemented. And we're hearing more and more of this, I didn't know, I didn't see the sign. Back in the 80s, people read the Batesville Guard. That's where they got all their information, they got all the news, they got all the happening, and that world does not exist anymore. And
Yeah, so, like I said before, the lawyers need to decide this, the city and the lawyers need to decide this, because there are certain precedences that are used in the industry to justify notification. And basically you say, this is how we're going to do it, like it is, right? Like you're correct, it's antiquated, right? Putting the sign out may not always be the best idea, but like with the state, we say that, hey, we'll put it in a statewide newspaper, so that covers the entire state. So like what you're saying, the local newspaper is not good enough anymore, you don't have a local newspaper, you do have the option to run it in the Democrat Gazette, they run all kinds of stuff. And so that gives somebody still that public environment to go see it. But if you also, you could limit it to the website or some other system of notification, so they're still gonna have to go read it, but at least it's there, and you're saying it's fair and free and available.
But the legislature designates what the public notice is and where it has to go.
Right.
And the sign is actually above and beyond that to start with. There's also the Arkansas publicnotices.com, which is the Arkansas Press Association, and a lot of our Batesville water notices go up on here, which is a good way to reference it, I guess.
Right.
And then you can share it on Facebook or whatever. But I talked to the girls about that today, about getting that added in there, and then we made some improvements about 6 months ago for those who were here. Chad and I were talking that we need to make sure we're getting our minutes in with the packets for city council, because then that gets uploaded. And so even though they're running a month behind, essentially, once these minutes will be approved next meeting, right? And then the next one to go out will be that minute. So it's running a little bit behind, but still they're making them public, right?
Well, I give you what Sherwood does, so I'm more familiar with it. The minutes are drafted well in advance of when the packet has to go to the council, because the council sees the draft minutes. Not the approved minutes, but they at least know what was going on. And that would probably be a decent way to do that, instead of the day of the meeting. I've already been approached by one council member on this issue, and the question was, is it legal for the planning commission to require a notification of other property owners by mail? And the answer is, and my answer was, the city is doing right now what's required by state statute, which is published in the newspaper. And it also requires for a public hearing, and what the public hearing is about. And they're putting up signs. But in the answer to your question, yes, the planning commission can do that. Actually, it's not the planning commission, as I explained to them, that a number of other cities do require mail notification to property owners. It ranges from the next door neighbor to somebody within 200-300 feet, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense for that kind of wide range, as the impact most of the time is usually very narrow, and all you're doing sometimes is getting more people in to complain about something that have no business complaining about it. But and there's multiple ways to handle that, and I think that's going to come before the commission, so you might as well be thinking about it. One of the ways that's probably most common, that you see it especially in older ordinances, is to require certified mail. And that means that the applicant has to do it. It means the applicant has to go to their friendly abstract company and get the owner of record, because you don't send it to the printer, you send it to the owner of record. And they have to know what area within which they have to do it. So one of the things you have to consider, do you want to make it that extensive? And I've heard more than once, in more than one city, that certified mail doesn't do you any good if the property owner lives in Chicago. And so you're really not doing much of any kind of notice. Sometimes it's just send a letter to the resident at that address, which within the area. And Sherwood, now because of a good GIS system in Pulaski County, they go ahead and give the applicant the names of the property owners within the required area. They just do that as a service. Property owner still has to get the notice out, but the city lets them know who's to do it. That saves them a little bit of money. Those are some of the options. My advice to the commission and to the council is that regardless of how much, and I'll say one more thing. I have suggested before that the packet that you got in the mail from me ought to go on the city's webpage a week before the meeting, so that anybody, if they are interested in what the city is doing, can read it on the webpage. And even if you didn't send out a mail notice, they got no excuse. There's a sign up and what's going on here. Go to the city webpage and the agenda will be there. And that's one way to handle it. But when you open
So agendas in the note, in the minutes on the webpage, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
It is very common these days for people to do a lot more than what's being done now.
Put the agenda plus the staff review, because the staff review is really what tells anybody out there, here's what the planning commission is going to be looking at. And this is what the staff recommendation is going to be. And at that point, they know, oh, well, I don't have a problem with that, or that's awful. Let's go complain. My advice to the commission and to the council is that regardless of how you set this up, I'm all for public notification, making sure people have an opportunity to know what you all are thinking about doing and going to be dealing with. But don't spread the net so widely that people from the other side of the county come in and say, I don't want these damn things in here. My advice to you is what a land use attorney once told during the trial when he was asked, don't the neighbors have a right to have an opinion on this? And the answer was, of course they do, as long as that opinion is based on fact. And what you need to do is make sure as you're running the meeting is, I don't wanna hear your opinion on something. I'm not going to respond to that. I wanna hear facts from you about how this is actually going to cause harm to public health, safety, or welfare. And I'll listen to them all day long, but the final analysis, I mean, when I was chairman of the commission, I'd say, ma'am, you're not giving me any facts, and I can only vote on what the facts are before me. You can give me some facts, I will certainly listen to it, but the facts have been given to me by staff, and you haven't told me anything that contradicts that. And that's the discipline you have to, and some small towns can't hardly do that because their aunt and uncle out in the audience saying,
So it's two, I mean, we got two phases here. A, making sure that the public is aware of what we're doing, and then B, we have to get a little sharper on our discipline as far as not letting somebody meander for 10, 20 minutes without their, you know, a traffic count increase of 12 cars, you know, substantially changing the neighborhood.
I will
Well,
say
you gotta
that-
let them go, you gotta let
Sure.
them have their opinion.
Our chairman.
Well, we have a 3-minute limit.
The other trial, I said, this is an example, when I was chairman, some young lady stood up at the podium and turned around to the audience and said, don't you all agree? And I said, ma'am, you speak to the commission, you don't speak to the audience. This is not a place for you to make a speech. I mean, you have to control the meeting. And the other piece of advice I'd give you is that if you've got a room full of people and they're all from the same neighborhood, that look, folks, in the interest of time, if you could appoint a spokesman and that somebody that you trust to tell us what's wrong with this and how you feel about it. And then after that, if you have something that wasn't brought up, feel free to come up and talk to us. Otherwise, we're going to be here all night hearing the same thing over and over and over again. And the number of times we hear it doesn't persuade us. The quality of it is what it is.
Right, and if you wanna see a perfect example of this, come to any RDOT public involvement, we do these all the time. I've disposed of many public involvement comments, like, it gets documented, it gets done, it gets documented, people say whatever they wanna say. If it's craziness, it's crazy. You say it's craziness and you go on about what you're doing, if somebody has a valid point, you use the information to prove that you did your due diligence, document your decision, and to not get yourself into a bind. It's not easy.
I will say
You will
something.
absolutely be facing aggravated people, because when they say, what is that red line, and you say that's the right of way, I'm buying your house, they have cuss words for you, I promise.
We don't buy no cussing in our meetings. But one of the things, I have spoken to the mayor, and I don't know what he can or will do about it, but I have recommended that he assign staff responsibility to be the secretary of this commission.
We've discussed this, yeah.
Because, staff can do it immediately after the fact, quicker and easier than somebody who's trying to participate in the discussion and still taking notes. Until something like that can happen, I will help out the secretary, because I've got some experience with it.
Is there a legal reason that we are considering going to some of the AI meeting?
No, we discussed that too.
My
That's
phone,
what titles are.
I've got an app recording right now.
It is frightening how good they are. I mean, it is spot on, and they take all the fluff out and they go straight to the fact, and it's very
Speak
compelling.
one, speak two. And we've also got video running all the time.
Yeah.
On that, you mentioned putting minutes, on the website
Yeah.
for, should that not be from 2 meetings ago? Like, we shouldn't put unapproved minutes out there.
I'll tell you with my most recent experiences, obviously, Sherwood. And what they do is that they put the draft minutes in the agenda packet, because the agenda packet's what the commission's gonna be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there, even if it hadn't been approved, as part of the agenda. And separately, after the agenda has been approved and signed, it goes on a separate line. So then the minutes are separate. So it's in 2 places, one draft and one final. And I think it'd be a good idea to do both.
You're saying do that with the council, right? Right.
Yeah.
To the council.
Yeah, but
They'll get
that way
quicker.
you get it immediately.
They'll get it quicker than, like tomorrow, we've got a meeting. And normally it would be the next week.
That would be tough to do.
Yeah. This is unusual, it's tomorrow. We're not usually back to back.
Is the council gonna discuss this anyway, or do we need to make a motion?
So Rick controls the agenda, I don't think, it wasn't on the agenda that I saw.
Okay. I mean, I feel
Well, one
strongly
thing,
that
the
we
agenda's gotta be
should
approved.
be discussing, additional layer of public notice.
Chad, the signage that you put out, is there any like QR code or anything that can be added that someone can go up and see it, like all information, they can at least just.
No, but you put the website.
Yeah, I mean, you have the website on there, that's what I mean, just like, we have something that can lead someone to it, because what, the issue is gonna be, people are, there's so much saturation and all, and well, information is out there, it's like, we're gonna have to basically throw it in all these places, just so, someone says, well, I didn't see it here, but it's like, guys, it's on the city website. I know running in the paper's really not existing anymore, but you still, that's the statute, and you're putting signage out. I mean, you can't dedicate one person to spend 6 hours to make sure, hey, we've got all 15 spots where people can see, because we're still gonna have someone complain and say, I didn't see it. I agree. So, I mean, I guess, we need to pick probably 3 or 4 forms of media, stick with the signage, stick with the paper, because that's what the statute calls for, city website and Facebook page. I mean, I think that's what needs to be done, because people can share it, people can do that, and then we've already covered ourselves on what.
Well,
It needs to be loaded to the city website and
Yeah.
shared.
Well,
You can share it to Facebook, or city page, but it doesn't need to be loaded on the city page, it's too much, you know.
Yeah.
As long as it's linked back, it should be fine.
Well, I think also it's important to state, to make your statement, this is what we're going to do, like, however many, take on as many as you want to take on, right? But if you, as long as you have that statement that says, hey, you know, we're doing more than minimum, this is what we do, then share that around, right?
But, you know, in that case, this thing was 14 months old.
Yeah,
Both adjoining property owners were present.
the property sold, well, 3 times, I guess, and then there's also the residential piece that's down there too, that adjoins a lot, that has also sold twice. So,
Can I make another statement? I've mentioned this, I can't remember here, is that you have to almost ignore what somebody says they want to do when they come in with a request for a rezone. Because they will lie, or things change, and it's just reasonable that things can change. And people think they're getting blindsided, and so when you're looking at a rezone, what you really should think about is any use that would be permitted in the zone they're requesting be a good idea and a good fit at this location. And if the answer is, oh, there's 3 or 4 things in here that would really be bad, then you probably should rethink about whether you want to do it or not. Because once you have done that zoning, they can apply for anything that's permitted there, period.
Is that what
In fact,
happened?
it's illegal for the city to put a condition on a rezone. That's called contract zoning, and it's illegal. The only time you can do that is a planned unit development or a conditional use, but that's not a rezone.
Is that what happened here?
this is a C1.
Yeah, so, yeah, but it was approved as an R2. So like he's saying, when they approved it as an R2, they probably should not have approved it as an R2.
No, that's not what it's
Because it left the door open to do, I'm guessing they said that they were gonna do a duplex, and then now they wanna do more.
Well,
What I'm
it didn't make
saying is
sense
that they
for-
approved it on the basis that they thought it was gonna be just a duplex or something. And
I approved it because I thought it was gonna be, there's no reason for it to be a C1.
Yeah, it was less, it definitely mitigated the amount of traffic that could be, I mean, 'cause somebody put a store at the end of that road. So it was changing it from commercial down to a residential, and the other thing
But
is,
it's
there was.
landlocked, right?
No, it's not landlocked.
That was not landlocked.
But there was no opposition.
It's a cul-de-sac, but it's still a C1 butted up in a cul-de-sac in a residential.
Yeah, we know, you
makes
don't
no
want that,
sense. No,
but.
so that's why the R2 is rezoned, it's like, well, this actually is more suited for this area, because if you leave the door open for C1 in residential, that's that.
No, I mean,
And there was no
it
opposition.
should have been
That's the
R1.
thing,
Nobody came to oppose it, and, you know, everybody that was here this morning and said, well, we didn't know it was a rezone.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but, you know, I just, with how this went viral this past week and a half, there is no reason for us not to do something that's as simple as uploading it to our controlled website and then sharing it to our Facebook page. If they can't find it at that point, that's on them. But speaking the words out loud, you should have seen the sign and you should have read the newspaper. It seemed very, 2011. You know, it's just not the way things work now. So let's get ahead of the times before we end up being so far behind we're laughed at.
Was it, changed from R1 to C1 at one
No, I think it was
That
leftover
was-
shrapnel with
I
the Home Depot.
Way before
Way back.
Home Depot
Yeah.
and Walmart came in, that was all R1 up there.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, well,
the
it
whole
is.
area was changed to C1.
They want to keep
And
that.
then they started shipping away up at C1.
Why didn't they
They probably
they
did.
want to keep that as the ditch that it is, as the
Right.
riparian area that
Didn't know.
it needs to be.
Well, there is no zoning for that. The commercial would have made sense, because if it's a commercial use and you put a big thing there, you're gonna have to put the engineered draining. It would all fit, but when Home Depot bought just enough to not.
They bought all of it. They bought all of it.
Yeah.
Oh, they did, so,
And
yeah.
it's back,
And the
it's
city
back
doesn't
in
have
Carroll
the budget to buy
family.
every drainage that is there.
That's not an
The
option.
designated floodway was actually flooded, not even in this.
Right, but this is immediately upstream, right, or
It
downstream?
was
right?
drainage, then.
It's the drainage, yeah, the city should have got that and kept it.
Anyway, do we need to make a recommendation to city council, or do we feel it's gonna be on their docket?
I don't think it's on the docket tomorrow, sure.
Well,
Is it unheard of for us to make a recommendation?
if you require anything different from the applicant, it will have to go through you in a public hearing to the council.
Don't want anything
Ordinance
different from the
change.
applicant.
All you're doing is doing something on the webpage, something like that, that's administrative, do it. You just have to figure out who's responsible for what.
Well, that's my question is, do we need to kick it up so that they know they need to?
Well, they're already doing it. So
Okay.
I just wanna deal with it and see what they come back with. They're working on some stuff now, so.
And that's why it's real important for staff to be able to get the agenda packet out. Because if you don't do that, then there's nothing to put on the webpage.
I definitely try to just keep it simple, just try to go before, and then that's pretty much the main source of what people see.
I personally don't like the letter, that's expensive.
So you do or don't?
I don't know.
I mean, that's all.
To the
I feel like
resident,
you're going
to the
through it.
resident makes more sense than just put it to the, address, but, I mean, I think most of the mail that we send nowadays is junk, so.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
No, I'm not saying go that way at all. This is a.
But, yeah, I think it definitely, we need city website upgrades and links to the Facebook page readily accessible. I still think we're gonna encounter this, but I don't think people care enough to read it on a day-to-day basis.
No.
They just care when it's in their backyard. And when it's not in their backyard the next 30 years, they'll figure it all out.
I mean, even if it's something that, I mean, Walker now, whoever's gonna maybe pick it up with some traction, they might share it, you know, it's just.
They probably will.
They go over it, I mean, they were at that meeting today.
Yeah, so I mean, that's. Potentially that could be something.
She calls it a compliment, so. She has a question.
Well, it also, it wouldn't maybe not hurt if you knew something could be contentious, to go a little above and beyond and notify people on our own, instead of notify people like you. You can go knock on somebody's door, say, hey, do you know about this? You don't have to make it a new official way to notify people.
Need to be careful.
I was about to say.
You do, I'm not saying that.
Well, I mean, if I'm a developer,
Very differently than.
a developer the month before didn't have, we didn't send staff out to do that, and then all of a sudden, my development, they felt the need to do that, I'm not gonna be very happy about that.
Right.
That's happened
And
fairly recently.
Anyway.
So we good on old business?
What?
Motion to adjourn?
Good old business.
That is the state of the.
I make motion. Do I have a second? Second, all right.
Can't nobody do anything, can't do anything good for your neighbor. favor these days, Kenny.
Listen, I'll tell you something, I thought the mayor's interrupted, I'm back from way under 500 on me getting 6% more